The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hello and good evening, or good afternoon, or good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to the Queen of Hearts show with myself, Taj, and Christine Hart will be coming on a little bit later. She's running a little bit late today, but she will be on with our guest today, who is Tony Topping. I just want to wish everyone, all of our listeners, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and thanks for supporting Christine on her show this year. I know it's been a difficult time for a lot of people this year. Hopefully next year will be a much better year for everyone. And I'm just going to bring on Tony Topping now. And most of you will have known him from alternate media as well as the mainstream media. And I'm just going to bring him on now. Hi, Tony, are you there?
Oh, hello. Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine, yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Good evening, Sarge.
Welcome, Tony, to Revolution Radio. How are you today?
Oh, we're unwell, matey. We're unwell. But you know, in this game, in my game, exhaustion is our constant companion, and up against the odds, up against it, Taj, is what it's all about, really. Living in the UK at the moment, with experiencing what we're going through, it certainly is.
Okay, most of our listeners will probably have heard of you before, but do you want to maybe talk about first of all where it all began for you, how you got into this whole field, and your experiences?
I'm just my brain's not running. I'm full of cold, so I've got a cold virus, so I'm just feeling a bit exhausted and running a high temperature, so we can get the violins out and then we'll get on with the show. Okay, so what it is, matey, is that we my first UFO, my first paranormal related incident happened at age 2 when I had something walk through a wall. What is interesting to note is this walk through a wall at that time didn't have any bearing until possibly about 43 years later, where they gave the meaning of why that was. So I've had constant experiences through childhood. My father was extremely psychic. He could actually, he could do all kinds of things. He, for example, could heal a cat, bring a cat back from the dead. My uncle Bill in the back of an ambulance with a heart attack, and the ambulance crew looking baffled as my father, with the laying of hands, brought him back. The healing of somebody's neuralgia. Equally, he could, a family member got themselves in a bit of bother, and equally I remember him sat in the living room, closing his eyes and saying, I hope the place burns down, and the boiler room of the premises blew up. Luckily there was nobody in it, but the boiler room blew up, and I never forget that. And he said in the 1950s he served in Vienna in the West Yorkshire Regiment, and he was saying that he was approached by the KGB in Vienna at that time. This is quite possible if they were aware that he was psychic, or they were aware that he had those abilities. There was a spy ring running in Vienna at the time, and he had to report it to his superiors, but he would never tell me the full story. Now, he wasn't a nice man, and what would happen is, instead of him kind of giving me a smack if I was naughty, he would be able to lay me on the bed, sparko, with a thumping headache. He was a very cruel man, and he wasn't a nice man either. And I have reason to suspect that, looking back, that he may have been targeted because in our game, the future, time, UFO interaction, human beings all seem to happen in this bizarre circus. And so what happened to me is that I started dabbling with the occult and casting magic spells, which kind of backfired, but I started having strange dreams, Taj. Around about 9-10 years of age, dreams of nuclear war, very hard, real specific dreams of nuclear war and all kinds of things happening. It used to terrify me as a child. And so in childhood, it was very difficult for me. It was quite an abusive childhood, really. And I ended up going to stage school. And before I went to stage school in about 91, I had an incident over my house with a UFO. I was on my way to rehearsal. It came in over the house. It was like something out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And it started flashing its lights, rotating, and then vanished in the space of about 10 seconds. And I couldn't believe what I had seen. And then it kind of like speeds up. I went to drama school, left drama school and worked in London. I went to drama school in London as well. Trained originally as an actor. Little would I know, Sergeant, the circus that would be hurtling towards me in the years ahead. But for now, it's all kind of very low key. The UFOs are present. I have no idea why. Walking down the high street in Praed Street in Paddington, actually, round about 93, 94.
Do you have any like experiences of being abducted as a child?
Yes, actually, no, not as a child. No, only the other day. Actually, only yesterday I had an abduction experience. But we'll leave that for now. Oddly enough, I should say that. But so what happened was we saw this UFO. I saw this UFO, should I say, coming out of the clouds and was about to crash into a block of flats, or what I thought. I remember running after this fire engine, and I was just about to tell them what was about to happen, and it vanished into thin air. Did this UFO, just literally vanished. And so I thought, wow, that's interesting. Why did that happen? And then I moved back to Selby. I fell on hard times, moved back to Selby, and had this kind of like, the first incident that happened was in about 96 when a UFO came in over the garden. And there was this bright orange flash in the sky. It actually woke my dear mother up, actually, and it kind of like there was this flash, the UFO came over. I started having strange dreams, very strange dreams as well, particularly of nuclear submarines at the time. This has bearing now, kind of thing. So what was happening was these little incidents that were going on were like placements in time of a giant jigsaw puzzle. And in 1999, just to cut a long story short, a UFO literally came in over my house, over the housing estate, and illuminated a TV antenna. Literally illuminated it. And it was at that point that we had secret police activity on me. We had the stalking, the phone calls, the unmarked helicopter, all the things that would happen should you have an agency that is not under any form of jurisdiction, but knows what's going on, kind of like coming after me kind of thing, for reasons that I did not understand. Quite apparent that this agency would have a rudimentary understanding of where the UFOs were and what they were doing. And so it kind of like, that was in the early 1990s, 99 should I say. What is interesting to note for your listeners, I'm sure some will be aware, because they're not stupid, is the fact that there is, and we should all be concerned about this, because Eisenhower was concerned about it, MacArthur was concerned about it, Disraeli was concerned about it, even the bloody Queen has at some point mentioned this. We do have a secondary surveillance state, Sarge. We don't just have one surveillance state, we have a secondary surveillance state. I worked in the surveillance industry for 10 years, 12 years, something like that, in CCTV and all that kind of thing. But I know that there is a secondary surveillance state in terms of mind-invasive technology. And that is something that people should be aware of. They have the technology to tap the human mind, and that's what happened to me. I started having these very strange incidents occur after this UFO came over, being awoken all hours, gunfire, phones ringing in the head. Technology that was basically known as VTS, or voice to skull technology, being used on me. It was pretty horrific. But little did they know that the people that were doing this, little did they know they were staring down the barrel of a gun at something very advanced. These people behind these UFOs are very advanced individuals. But it's not all plain sailing, Taj. It's not all the Space Brothers are here to save us. It's not all utopia. But the disclosure process, which I'll discuss later with the listeners, the actual disclosure process is incredible. The disclosure process that's written about on the internet and written about in books, and the screaming of disclosure from the government, is not what's going on in real life. Real life and UFO contact, as compared to what's written about on the internet, is very different indeed. Very, very different.
Do you think the UFOs that you experienced, were they Were they extraterrestrial, or
They are.
were they
Yes, they
ours?
are. Yeah, no, they are. They're not. They're not ours. They're extraterrestrial groups. 14 and counting. There's a guy called Clifford Stone who worked in something called, I think, Project Pounce, was it something like that? UFO recovery, where he called them the Heinz 57, where he said there was 57 varieties. In 40 years of experience, I've counted about 16 different alien groups. The most fascinating thing, Taj, is that they look like us and we look like them, and that's the most fascinating thing to behold.
Right.
This may sound odd, but some of it I kind of like don't discuss because we do have unaccountable lunatics out there who think, and I resent this, who think that you shouldn't know about this situation and think that it should be kept secret. And that is the problem. That is actually causing a major problem, especially on world affairs, which I'll come to regarding the Nordic one, blue-eyed, and the Ukraine and their craft and what happened over the town about 2 years ago. I can go into all that for you. So really, there's that much to cover, Taj. I don't really know where to begin, and
Why?
also I'm tired
Why?
out. Guide me, matey. Guide me along.
Why do you think the UFOs were particularly interested in you?
They might not be particularly interested in me, Taj. They're probably interested in you. They're interested in the guy down the road. They're
Right.
interested in the woman down the street. It doesn't work like that. It's not that narcissistic. As soon as you think that you're going to put the landing strip out there and welcome the Space Brothers as ambassador to the aliens, you're going to be in big trouble. It's part of a highly complex situation that an innocent man like myself had stumbled into, I would suggest. And therefore, with that comes the consequences of power. For me, it's all about power and the seeking of power and not using power correctly, I think, is why it all happened to me. But it could happen to anyone. So
Right.
it's not just happening to me specifically. It's actually a form of disclosure, a very highly complex and clever form of disclosure that is occurring because the governments of this world are not going to disclose anything at all to the people, and anybody who thinks that they are it's just not going to happen. It's on a very tight lockdown for very strange, dark reasons, really. And as Eisenhower has said, MacArthur said it as well. MacArthur actually said that he was more concerned about the enemy within. So, for example, you will note, for example, at the moment that we have Russia suddenly on mission creep with Russia. Russia are now the enemy. And to the Russian people, the West are now the enemy. This escalating mission creep. The thing is, though, is that you see that as a goalpost target. It's like a football hitting a net. We see in terms of the mission creep of Russia, NATO, this kind of conflict going on. We see that as the net moving, but we don't see the cause of it, which is the football that caused the net to move, if I've explained myself correctly.
Yeah.
So these experiences, what some of us contactees go through, are because we've seen the football, we've seen the dynamics behind the scenes. They saw it with the Americans in the 1950s, and the Russians did as well with their paranormal espionage units. They saw this all very clearly. So it baffles me as to why we have this mission creep of conflict towards Russia, conflict with the West, fake news, whereby you're told what to think. Only their news, for example, CNN, only their news is true. And these are very sinister mission creep undertones as to what is going on in our world. It's something we should pay very close attention to because these UFOs that came in over my home and the people behind them are certainly paying close attention to it all. Certainly are.
Okay. Do you know, like, for example, like the conflict in Syria? We're obviously told a lot of fake news about that. Do you
Yes.
know what's really going on there? I've heard stories about stargates and all kinds of things.
Yes, there is an occult situation with Syria at the moment where you it's how can I put it, Taj? How can I put this into words? If you look at Russia, there is an espionage unit in Russia that is dealing with psychic warfare, or they were at the time. Back in the time, they were called Troop 10,003. They were headed by a guy called Alexei Yusavin, and by strange irony, the CIA funded part of Russia's paranormal warfare research. It's documented they did do that. Now, the Russians had an excellent paranormal warfare unit, as in remote viewing, psychic espionage. The head, it's because of a guy called Joseph McMoneagle, who knows of my experiences. He put me in contact with his opposite number, who was then in the KGB at the time. This is Joseph McMoneagle, remote viewer 01, holder of the Legion of Merit, highly qualified guy. He's had medals in remote viewing. He's won the Legion of Merit for spying by unorthodox means, all this kind of thing. Now, it's interesting to note that the Russian this Russian unit, had something called remote influencers. The Americans had them as well. It was known as 8 ability, and some people possess 8 ability, the ability to influence. And what the Russians called this was the ability to influence affairs at planetary level. You could actually, if you were powerful enough, you could actually influence a situation and change it for the better, or change it to what the agenda.
Right. Is that done? Is that done psychically? Is it, or
yes,
using some kind of technology?
No, it's not. It can be done psychically. It can actually be done psychically. The thing with it is that if you change one situation, it will manifest elsewhere. For example, Taj saved the life of a guy who's about to be run over by a bus with remote influencing, and the guy on a bike gets run over somewhere else. This is the kind of paradox. I'm talking paranormal espionage here, and I'm leading into Syria. Therefore, we know that from all this data spanning nearly 40 years of my experiences, McMoneagle, Savin with the Russians, we know that world affairs are controlled. And so last year, for example, the Syria situation, something went on with all that. I can't really go into details. It's best I don't. It's very vague. I do apologise to listeners. It's really for my own safety. But I got a visit, a knock at the door, because many people. There are people out there, Taj, who will ring me up and say, Tony, I've got this problem, I've got that problem. And I'll say, have you been using power to influence something? And they'll say, yes, I did. I did this, I did that, I did the other. And I will say, there you go, because reality is controlled. Our reality is controlled, and it must be respected. Yeah. This must be respected. Last year, I got a threat from what it is that is the overseer of this circus. The threat was to do with the fact that Syria is indeed an occult zone. There's some very interesting articles on the internet describing it. I can't quite remember now. Just put in the search engine occult Syria, and it will give some good explanations as to what precisely is going on, because it is like an energy vortex. It is the promotion of fear. It's not what it appears to be. There's a paranormal element to it. And if you could influence that situation in Syria with an 8 ability, with a walk-in mine operation, as the Russians would call it, with an ability to influence at planetary level, then you may not live to tell the tale, Sarge. There's some reason why Syria...
Is that an extraterrestrial influence? Or
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. It is. It's also a demonic kind of situation, and it's interesting to note that this theme constantly crops up within the research work of researchers like myself, researchers like Nick Redfern, Linda Moulton Howe, to name but a few, and Alec Newald, a contactee in New Zealand. Alec Newald, in his book Co-Evolution, are we getting all this charge? I hope I'm not waffling here. I'm just talking away. But yeah. Alec Newald, Co-Evolution, he wrote this book. He was driving down the road. I'm sure your listeners might be familiar with. Driving down the road from Auckland, in New Zealand to Auckland, from someplace to Auckland. 10 days of missing time, didn't know where he was, and I think he was about 30 miles away from where he should have been. Knock at the door from 2 guys wanting to confiscate his car because it had been exposed to high electrical voltage. This is a constant theme where these contactees get a knock at the door from some bizarre authority asking, can they do this, can they do that, this kind of thing. He refused. But in his book, when he had interactions with the ETs from another dimension who do exist, he's not lying, they're there. They are in another dimension. They are dimensional extraterrestrials. And for the contact experiencer to experience contact with dimensional aliens opens up all kinds of freakish, unethical carries-on that they have to put up with. But they're not told this. There'll be a handful of us in the UK who've experienced UFO contacts. We're not told any of this. We've had to find it out for ourselves because the ethics stink. So it's not all about hailing the space brothers out there, harbingers of light. It doesn't work like that in real life. It's quite a comical circus, really, Taj. But this is interesting that the alien he met was a hybrid called Xena 5, she called herself, and she said this, that the Earth is ruled by a dark force. It is a form of life that should be respected. And that sentence in that book has profound implications for the whole of the human race, really, because it is indeed a form of life. It should indeed be respected. And I learned this kind of like by going down avenues that I shouldn't have gone into, and I came across it, bang. And it can happen. So you've got to be careful, Taj, because the good guys don't always win. So you've got to respect fire. You really have, because as I say, the good guys don't always win. And so that is kind of like the story in a rough way of Syria and what it is and what it isn't. It is some kind of paranormal thing going on there, like a signal in time that is kind of like, for some mysterious reason, there to cause fear. It's complex. It's kind of like, but it is there, and it could have been influenced quite easily. And what is interesting, as I know, is that these paranormal warfare units that are based in Russia, the UK, I know, has got one from what I understand, and America probably know all this, but yet we're on this very bizarre mission trip of conflict in the world between Russia or between China, but yet we know this data, we know this information, and from me, in my position, I find that baffling.
Right. Well, what I want to ask you is, like, what is the point in all of these wars? Why would an extraterrestrial being want to start wars all over the planet? To what end?
Well, it is interesting because, Taj, this is a very interesting question, because it's the same question I asked when I came face to face with the equivalent of what we would call Al Pacino, the Devil's Advocate, the equivalent of that. There was a film called The Devil's Advocate. I don't know what to read.
Yeah, I've seen
that kind of scenario. And I'm greatly puzzled as to why. I'm just as puzzled as you are as to why such an entity that has invested so much in this fantastic kind of circus of life that we see. I'm being a bit of a grey man here, because some of the stuff it does is not acceptable. Why would it destroy what it's invested in? Why would it do that? Why does it need to do that? And it's to do with being, for some reason, the brutal reality is, as a lot of researchers have said, it is to do with feeding off human fear. It's got to be. It's got to be the currency, is what my thinking is. But I'm not too sure myself, Taj, on that one. In over 44 years of dealing with all this, I can't understand the reason why it would do that.
Right.
But it does.
Have you heard, like, of topics such as soul harvesting, or
yes?
Obviously, if there's wars, there's more people dying, there's more souls to harvest, there's more energy for them to feed off of.
Yes, brutal that it is. It seems to be where it's going. That seems to be what it's all about. The thing is, of course, is that it's just not the utopia we would expect with the ETs either, because there's all this carry on of, well, the ETs would intervene, the ETs would not let us go to war with each other, and that's really not correct, because the issue is, Taj, is that part of the extraterrestrial intelligence behind the UFOs perhaps overrules the human race. And that is why there's been no disclosure. That is why it's so hard to get out there with the message that this kind of thing is going on. And there is, for example, the Americans in the 1950s, they formed an agency called the Collins Elite, because they couldn't quite understand why their planes were being shot out the sky. The Air Force at the time couldn't quite understand why their planes were being shot out the sky. And they sent up these, what were they now, F-94s, I think they were, jets. And they were firing rockets, 12 salvos at a time, at these UFOs and bringing them down. But they pinned it down, this mysterious agency called the Collins Elite, which isn't its real name. They've done an excellent book. I was communicating with Nick Redfern the other day about it all, actually. He wrote a book called Final Events. And it is certainly, that's Final Events. It's certainly a piece in a jigsaw puzzle where you can look at it and think, my God, that's quite incredible. What they reckoned, the conclusions they drew, there were elements of the Army, the FBI, and the Air Force that came under this mysterious nickname called the Collins Elite, which was looking at all this. And they've certainly concluded, in fact, they pinned it down, so it is said, to the work of Aleister Crowley, and I've forgotten the other guy's name, worked for Hughes Aerospace Corporation. But they pinned it down, Taj, to ritual and magic causing tears in space-time and allowing some of these UFOs to get in. some items that shouldn't have gone in. And so it kind of like our reality is somehow controlled via like a space-time continuum effect. And the Collins elite were kind of like approaching vicars. They were approaching fortune tellers, psychic. I think before the Collins elite, there was an operation called MK Often where they were trying this, where they tried to use psychics to understand what was going on around them. And at the moment, it's quite serious because, as I say, the world seems to be on a mission creep into some sort of very bizarre global conflict while knowing the underpinning data that I'm talking about. There are elements of America, Russia, whatever, who know this information. And I find that very disturbing.
Right. Could it? I mean, I've heard something like a lot of these UFOs are demonic in a way, or demonic entities
Yes,
coming from another
yes,
dimension and
yeah,
coming here for whatever reason.
that's what they concluded. It's actually a bit more simple than that. It would appear that alien, when she said this to Alec Newell, was quite correct. The world is ruled by a dark force. So it's actually a very ancient force that we're talking about. It should actually be, bizarre as it may seem, it should be respected. I'm probably lucky to be alive to tell the tale of that, actually, because it wasn't very pleasant when it happened, Taj. Because these are the kind of things that happen in the psychic environment. I mean, the other thing that happens to people like me and others who are kind of like at the sharp end of this is we get black ops wannabe posers, fantasists of people who think they work for the government or people that they think work for the intelligence services. A hair-raising story recently reached me of one very well-known lady, but she asked me to keep it quiet. Something that happened to her with a guy who pretended to work for somebody. Actually, it was a woman. And she indicated that she worked for this organisation, but hang on, she actually works for that organisation. And she really was quite an experience for her that you couldn't have really made up. And of course, there's all the gang stalking that goes on, the mysterious people that you meet. I met a guy a few months ago, actually last year it was, Taj, I think, where he claimed to be somehow involved with the Israelis. And it was a very bizarre meeting, and it kind of like you get these fantasist emails as well of people sending you emails claiming that they work for the government and know what's going on with with my experiences when they don't.
Yeah.
I could tell you things this week that have happened to me that would make you want to reach for the drinks cabinet, but I'm not going to do that because A, it's not fair. People do want to know, but B, there's kind of like you've got to be responsible with the knowledge. You've got to bring it to the level that matters. At the moment, the level that matters is this mysterious mission creep that's going on towards this bizarre conflict. And that's what's very worrying. That's where it's at for me at the moment. And we've got this flying circus over my house that's, well, it can be over my house or it can be at the alternative place that I use in Southport, for example, where we've got this kind of bizarre going on with them. It's not bizarre, actually, though, because when you look at the actions of the UFOs very carefully indeed, you discover that what they're doing is quite precise, very intelligent, and is actually signaling quite clearly who and what they're doing. And that also has implications for us as well. I personally think that Britain, this country, can hack it. I personally think that we can hack meetings with aliens. I think personally, if a craft landed at an airbase somewhere in the UK, they walked out and they shook hands and they said, "This is our craft, please take a look at it." I think we could hack it. I really do. And this is kind of like what happened to me, Taj, with the UFOs that came in over my house and the warning, which I can now go into if you wish, matey.
I just want to cover quickly. Do you think the British or whoever American governments, military, are working with these extraterrestrials? And if they are, what are they getting out of it?
Some element will be working with them for all the wrong reasons, but at the moment, currently, the ones I see currently are not working with any government at the moment. It appears their technology is quite advanced. They appear to be very precise in what they do. They're very educated people. There's an element of it where it's a pain in the arse. It's not all real life. It's absolutely unbelievable. You know, the Andromeda Galaxy, Taj, is populated heavily with life. That's like saying that the Earth is flat currently in our paradigm. If I was to go on a mainstream TV program and say, listen, Andromeda is populated. There's life out there. They'd just laugh at me. It'd be like the discovery of Galileo. It'd be like the discovery of that the Earth is round. It's kind of like that. That kind of Spanish Inquisition mindset is still with us. This kind of imperialist type of let's all have a war, let's all defeat the enemy mindset is still with us when we're being offered something alternatively. Colonel Philip Corso, in his book Charge, I've forgotten his second book. He wrote a first book called The Day After Roswell. One of the things that I think it was in his second book where he indicated that the ETs had actually said it is a bright future if you can handle it, and that appears to be what's going on at the moment with them. They're constantly, and it won't just be me. There'll be a handful of people in the UK will be getting this where they're coming in over the house, they're going out again, they're coming in, they go out, but it's specific. I've got a ham radio antenna. I'm a ham radio operator, Taj, and they seem to be over the years. Their theme seemed to be when they came over this house, antennas, radio antennas. So what they did a few months ago, and it's on my YouTube channel, is I've got this ham radio antenna that operates within the 30 to 10 meter HF bands or whatever, really. It's a shortwave transmitting antenna, very good quality one. Now what happened is this UFO came in over the garden, as they do, they go in, go out, as they do, and it came in and it kind of like morphed itself, literally changed its shape, flew through the antenna and flew out the other side again, as if nothing had happened. Now, the theme is antenna. A few years ago, looking back in my archive from when it very first began, once again a UFO comes in over the house, illuminates a TV antenna. In the 1990s, UFO over the house illuminates TV antenna for all to see. So it's this constant kind of theme of antenna, this constant kind of theme of communication. Last week, they came in over the garden low. Everybody goes on Facebook, oh, it's a plane, oh, it's not a plane. These are UFOs, specifically under intelligent control. They're not planes, they don't have a strobe sequence, they're not on any approach corridor. This thing specifically came in over the garden and specifically, once again, changed its shape to a square, like a doorway, because what they are communicating is the fact that some of these UFOs come from a higher dimensional realm of existence. So they're communicating that, and they're communicating a scientific understanding, according to them, approximately 700 years ahead of us, which would be a very realistic estimate, really. There are some wild estimates on the internet, but they're saying that they're about 700 to 800 years ahead of us in technology. So what you're seeing is kind of like this communication and this kind of scientific paradigm with a very deep spiritual component to it that has been out of sight of mankind for centuries. It's been oppressed, it's been suppressed, because we want our cities to be reduced to rubble by bombers, whether that be Russian bombers, whether that you don't, Taj, and the listeners don't, but the dynamic, the mission creep is there of this conflict, this kind of mindset that is the human race is actually up against, and that's what seems to be going on. It was interesting. I was going to do something for Channel 4. In fact, it's on your Facebook page, The Great UFO Conspiracy.
Yeah.
Everybody laughed at it, said it was a load of bollocks. Some people did. There was Miles in it, there was me in it, there was somebody in it. The thing is that on that morning, I was due to go and film outside the Royal Institute of International Affairs regarding UFOs. The theory being is, would such an organisation like them be involved? Do they cover up UFO research? Some authors say that they do, Taj. I don't know, but that's what we were going to essentially investigate. It was on that morning, it was at the height of the Ukraine crisis, and it was on that very morning where I'm asleep, and we had this extraordinary vision, just absolutely tremendous vision of these two triangle craft, two clocks. I think one said 20 to midnight, and the other said 5 to midnight. And these UFO craft were there. They were in a field near me, but it was all in this spectacular vision. And then you have this blasted guy appear who was blonde and blue-eyed, just appear in front of me as I'm sleeping, unmistakable, as if somebody had triggered a whole artificial reality game in front of me. It was just bizarre. And he was speaking to someone, but the volume was turned off. So I had no idea what the hell he said. I'm just being as honest as I can for the listeners as to what happened. So the illustrator, Lloyd Canning, did this tremendous illustration, and he got it. He got the clocks absolutely spot on as to what they look like. And I was left in no doubt that these guys in the triangles who were blonde and blue-eyed from the area of the Andromeda Galaxy were warning the governments of this world as to where this was all leading. They were warning them in no uncertain terms, because all is linked to all, and for some reason we affect each other. Even the people far away in another galaxy can be affected by our actions and intentions. And so there was kind of like this very bizarre carry on. And it was in the picture, there's a field, Taj. So there's the two UFO triangles, and in the picture there's this field. It's a field that I suspect they're going to turn up in. Now, they haven't turned up yet, but I think they will. Now, what bizarre is it going to seem? Now, no, it isn't bizarre. No, it's not bizarre. Let's be right. Let's defend our position here. It's not bizarre. It's very important work that we're doing. I should not apologise, Taj. Do you not think? I maybe spend too much time just apologising, and really I shouldn't.
I'm quite familiar with Lloyd's work. I use a lot of his work on my channel.
Awesome. So he's done this fantastic diagram. Now, the field is very interesting because, lo and behold, about a year later, within that field, what I'm talking about, the RAF decided to hold a massive air exercise over the town. It was as if we were being invaded. They had the typhoons over the town, they had this over the town, that over the town, all the air power over the town. And it said on the NOTAM, the Notice to Airmen that's published by the Civil Aviation people, it said there was going to be this whopping great big exercise over the town. It's comical, but this C-130 transport plane started circling over the town. It flew over my house backwards and forwards. I counted approximately 14 times on and off, back forth. And it had eyeball on the field where this vision had happened. The thing is that we did some loads of people took photos of it, so we put the photos together tonight and did some imagery analysis using my friend Jason. If it wasn't for Jason, my research would not be able to stand up as it does, because the image analysis he does of the UFOs is absolutely excellent, leaving us in no doubt that something is going on. So in the background is kind of like the C-130 is doing its air operation over the fields of the town, particularly paying attention to the field what I'm talking about, which isn't far away from me. And we put all the photos together to discover that this C-130 was being shadowed by a UFO. It was being watched. It was actually being just shadowed as it was doing its thing. So we can understand that for some reason there is some type of communication being initiated. There is some type of understanding. In July, I think, was it July of this year, we had an incident where a UAV came in over my house, one of these UAV things. It came over the house. I filmed it, but it wasn't the UAV that was of interest. It was actually what passed the UAV at great speed, which was a UFO. And it passed it at tremendous speed. It literally nosedived on it and passed it at tremendous speed in the opposite direction. So it literally had buzzed the UAV. This is because we are obviously trying to, there's something going on where somebody somewhere, an advanced race, an advanced intelligence, is trying to establish contact, is trying to divulge information, is actually trying to disclose something to us, Taj, outside of the normal channels, I would suggest. And that's probably where it gets very dangerous, because you don't know, an individual like myself does not know what I'm dealing with, doesn't know what circus I've been exposed to, and I actually really just can't quite seem to comprehend why this is going on, but it is.
Well, I mean, yeah. I know that the British military, at least, are interested in certain people. At the basis conference this year, just before, but in fact, the exact time that the conference was about to start, an Apache helicopter flew over the venue really slowly. Flew over a couple of times, and I asked a friend of mine, what do you think they were doing? And he told me that they were scanning everyone, scanning their auras, signatures, their energy signatures, to see what type of people were there, basically.
They do. That happened to me, Taj, on the local bridge coming up. Now, it's interesting how the Channel 4 documentary spun this, because that's what happened there was very important. You had a helicopter hovering across a road without any air regulation to it, unmarked, green colour, Special Forces helicopter, as confirmed by Jane Defence Weekly, that the British didn't use this type of helicopter. What they did is that they were very naughty, actually, because they edited all that out. I should have known better, but they edited all that out, and then altered it, spun it, so that they presented the helicopter as if it was a normal helicopter in flight. And I was the paranoid guy with conspiracy beliefs who believed the helicopter was following it. And nothing could be further from the truth. There was a whole story behind it. There was witnesses, there was cars parking the horn, because the bloody thing was just on the height of a lamppost. It was just a few feet above a lamppost because he needed to be side on because he was doing measurement analysis. That's precisely what he was doing. So, but of course, you could spin that either way you want. You could even say, no, it wasn't. It was a routine training flight. They could even release documentation to even prove it, couldn't they? But when contactees, as you rightly said, Sarge, at conferences are subjected to this surveillance, and frankly, the people doing it have not got a clue what they're doing or a clue what's going on, really. I think.
Yeah, well, I think the people in the helicopter don't know what's going on. They're just told go there, scan these people and come back.
Yeah.
They don't know, they don't know what they do with that information.
You see, the thing is, at Worthing, a friend of mine up in Worthing was bloody psychic, and she had an incident where one of these helicopters was near her house, and this UFO, just at the same type of UFO that I filmed, just appeared from nowhere and went for the helicopter. Literally, nearly caused what would be classed as an air miss on the helicopter. It came right close and whooshed past the helicopter. So you've got this theme constantly of, with certain individuals, back it off. With certain individuals, you've got this theme coming from them. So, at the end of the day, this is all about, I think, Taj, our evolution and where we're going and our evolution. And the fact that we're getting glimpses that are of great use to to mankind, really, to nations. But unfortunately, we are living in this paradigm and of this mindset where all this is laughed at, sneered at, and of course, conflict is the currency. It disgusts me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've also heard that a lot of helicopters you see aren't actually helicopters; they're cloaked ships. And,
you could.
That's the only way they can move around without being noticed. Is that they?
Yeah, you could argue that some of these you've got a whole. You see some of these UFOs that you see are plasma related as well. There's a whole scientific base that's been kept from the public regarding plasma beings, plasma UFOs, plasma civilization. That they're there, and the Ministry of Defence worked at when they did Project Condign, which was the study of plasma effects and UFOs. So that even the Ministry of Defence knew that there was something in this. There's a picture, I think, of me just about to give a talk in Berwick. Berwick up Scotland way, Holy Island, where this UFO comes in near the marquee just as I'm about to give a talk. Beautiful photo of it just coming in over the marquee like a plasma craft. And they indicated throughout the 40 years of me dealing with all this, they actually indicated that they'd been around following mankind since the days of World War II. And of course, sure enough, if you look at some of the pictures of World War II, you'll see some of these Foo Fighters knocking around some of the aircraft during the course of World War II. So we've got this constant extraterrestrial presence around us. We're connected to them. We have evolved with them. They are part of our evolution, and we are part of their evolution. And that seems to be what's going on.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the ET groupings and that you're aware of. What ET groups that you're aware of at the moment?
The ET groupings are very interesting. I think the most nicest has been the ones that are related to plasma beings. They have been in the 40 years of dealing with all this, and I'm going to write a book about it all because it's very difficult for me to express into words. But for example, the plasma beings, the ones where the pure white ships that you see, like the Foo Fighter effect, have been the nicest people that I've met along the way. The Nordics have been the most comical and the most serious and the most tribal. The Nordics are blonde and blue-eyed individual. Can you imagine, Taj, only a few weeks ago being woken up by them to tell me that they are many and varied from the galaxy of Andromeda. Many and varied from the galaxy of Andromeda. And these are the kind of things that go on because it's on a constant information process. So there's pieces of information that they will talk about, pieces of information that they won't talk about. Their aircraft, for example, are years ahead of any aircraft that we have. They're artificially intelligent. Some of our space agencies, for example, are only just exploring artificial intelligence, whereas their craft, the Nordic, Blomberwide, their craft are highly intelligent. They're AI capable. They have their own mind. They're capable of air-sea rescue capability by themselves. They're highly advanced craft, and they're used as well for analysis, similar to what we do with helicopters. But they can be used. The craft can be used as analysis tools. Very advanced in that sense of the word. I'm not sure, however. All they told me is that they're from Andromeda, the galaxy of. And I'm not sure what planet they're from. They've never told me that, other than they're many and varied and relate to seafarers. They were, back in the day, sailors. They were on the ocean and all this kind of thing. And I assume that their planet is radically different to ours. The thing is, charged with them is that planet Earth is a strange place to them. Even though their craft may fly over our skies, if you put one of them in the high street, they'd have a job on. It's a bit of a strange place for them. I don't know why. I think they have an entirely different way of doing things to us. But I've dealt with them now since about 2014, when they first appeared and declared who they were. The other one is, of course, the dimensional ETs, where if you're having liaison with them, you kind of like cross into their dimension. But not only have you crossed into their dimension, there is a dynamic of the fact that you may have travelled into the future in some way and are then put back again. And if you're a UFO contactee, that can have all kinds of very strange experiences for you, because you kind of like rudimentary way travelled in time without really knowing it. And you can get all kinds of problems with that. The thing is that also for the contactee who's had dimensional contact with ETs that are dimensional, they kind of like have studied Sanskrit. All these groups have studied Sanskrit. There is a particular group, Robert Dean talks about it in his, he did a speech, at the Leeds conference for UFOs about the NATO assessment, where NATO did an assessment, and it was called the assessment. They did this assessment because on one end, Russia appeared to be going on high alert because they assumed the West were flying aircraft at them. And NATO appeared to be going on high alert because they assumed that Russia was flying aircraft at them. They turned out to be UFOs. According to Robert Dean, NATO did this assessment to find out what the UFOs were about. And there's this most staggering sentence that he comes out with, that he said that the admirals and the generals got very nervous and very jumpy when they did this assessment because some of the aliens look like me and you, Taj. They look like me and you. We look like them and they look like us. And that is absolutely correct. Some of them do look like us. There's a group in New Zealand, a UFO contact group in New Zealand, who know of the Andromedan-looking human ETs. A little bit taller, a little bit different looking. If you put them in the high street and stand out in a crowd, Taj, that kind of thing, they are present as well.
I guess that would be quite scary for the military to know that there could be
it's quite loads
and loads of aliens just walking around and you wouldn't even know it.
And I think, bizarre as it may seem, as Robert Dean said, and as I know, I'm not surprised at the military's reaction to that, because based on my experiences, you really don't know what you're dealing with them. You just don't know. And also that they said the word many and varied. Now that means problems. There's going to be differences of opinion among them. There's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly among them. It's not all a utopia of the space brothers are here to heal the world. It doesn't work like that in real life. It's more Doctor Who and Star Trek Taj than we will probably ever know, really, out there in the real world of UFO contact. And they are there. They are present. There's absolutely no doubt about that. That there are a little bit more advanced than us. Robert Dean was absolutely spot on when he said that. Absolutely spot on.
Could any of these aliens be what we refer to as the fallen angels, or?
You're specifically talking of the ruling hierarchy on Earth there. That's fallen from grace. That's fallen from a higher celestial dimension into the world of solid matter, because governing all this in the pecking order of these groups, and there's quite a few of them out there. You've got the Pleiadians as well. You've got the ginger-haired ETs. who are a most beautiful sight to see. You've got the human-looking ETs with the very hooked noses. You've got the ones that have the concertina foreheads. Some of the listeners will be going, "Oh my God, yeah, that's right." For some reason, you've got them out there. All sorts, and then you've got this hierarchical order. The Nordic, the blonde, blue-eyed ones, appear to be the advanced kind of superpower of the hierarchy, and their science begins, Sarge, I would suggest, where Jacob's Ladder's doorway opens. There's that very famous kind of image, isn't there, which Sarah talks about, I think, on Facebook, of Jacob's Ladder, the doorway at the top. Well, through that doorway is the higher celestial realms, the architects of the universe, the bits that are just beyond complexity. And it's probably from there where they fell. And that's where the interplay on Earth is actually going on, really, between the fallen and those from the higher angelic realms, the higher celestial realms, should I say. And this plays out to this day in world affairs. It plays out on Earth. The human race are an aspect of the higher celestial. They are an aspect of it. They've got the signature of it. That is why we are so very unique in that sense, I do feel. This I've learned after 40 odd plus years of observation with the UFO phenomenon and stuff happening kind of every day or every other day with strange goings on. I could go out tonight in the garden and film something coming over the house. Strange stuff that go on. And I'm lucky to tell the tale, Taj, because it's not pretty. Some of it is not pretty. The process of disclosure is incredible because they're not. Governments aren't disclosing, they're disclosing to us, and they're disclosing it to certain individuals as well. So you could guarantee that a scientist out there at the moment, with some organisation somewhere, may be interacting with them and being given information. It's all very stealth-like, and it only goes at the pace that mankind can handle. They're not going to open the files up. They're not going to present it to us. There'll be big fanfare. It doesn't work like that in real life. But its disclosure is happening at some level, but not in the way we would think.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I mean, is there one particular race who's in control of the planet, or are they all sort of vying for control, as it were?
I think there's one particular ruling hierarchy that is in control of human affairs at the moment. It should be. This sounds such a bizarre remark to make, but you do have to respect fire. You really do. It's a form of life, you see. It's a very Buddhist way of thinking, but this alien Xena in Alan Newell's book Coevolution was quite correct in what she said. What bothers me is your very perceptive point of earlier as to why, if you're kind of like, if you're operating a business planet Earth, why destroy your investment? Why? I don't get that bit. I just don't understand that myself. Perhaps, Taj, I'll learn as I go along. The experiences are certainly going to get deeper. They are currently very complex at the moment as well. And so, probably on sanity, really, you've got to just be responsible with the information that you say, and you've got to give readers an impression. Listeners an impression. That we're moving somewhere with all this. It's not all actually doom and gloom. We are actually moving.
Well, another way of looking at the wars could be that the different alien factions could be, fighting it out, as it were, on Earth, as it were, through the conflicts that are happening right now all over the planet.
It could well be, but what is odd is when you've got some advanced culture turning up and warning the governments of this Earth to cool it off, back it off, cool it off, because they've been there. They know what this is all about. They know what this is all about. You've got these people on Twitter, haven't you, some all kinds of think tanks talking about the Russian threat, the Western threat, this threat, that threat, the new enemy, this, that, and the other. And once they see European cities reduced to rubble, where is their talk? Because it's all lofty intellect while not knowing the reality and horror of what they're instigating. This is the naivety behind it all, Sarge, which I find very disturbing. So we have got this paradigm there, this very, very strange, sinister mindset of this bizarre conflict, which they think would be a low-intensity thing. Why they want this conflict, I'm not too sure, but it's very worrying. So when you've got this advanced culture turning up and telling, let's say, the governments of America, Germany, Russia, France, and Britain to cool it down, to, cool down the situation because we've been there, we know what it's all about, and there's a new future if you can handle it. I think that's quite a message.
Yeah, some people say that what they're doing is they're playing out the Book of Revelations. So they're
yes, if you were the
I don't necessarily agree with that. But
no. If you were the Collins elites, that agency I was talking about, they would say yes, that is Revelations. Currently, at the moment, you'd have to be very. If you were the Collins elite, an agency that dealt with this kind of thing, you would have to be very, from a paranormal warfare view, you'd have to understand walk-in mind operations. So you'd have to know where your vulnerability points were. For example, people in authority on the nuclear trigger. The kind of like would be an issue around how they're thinking and what they're doing. Do you get my drift? It's a very and the Russians didn't set this up because it looked pretty, and the Americans didn't set it up. There's all this remote viewing stuff and psychic warfare stuff because they could step back and say, "Oh, doesn't it look pretty, boys?" What they did, it was there to be used, Taj. It was, and you'd have a fascinating look at the Russian site, newcosmology.com. You take a look at those guys and what they studied with their remote viewing and psychic understanding, and they came to some staggering conclusions about the universe, spirituality, UFOs, and mankind. But it all started as a paranormal warfare research unit in Russia's highly secret intelligence agency, I think the KGB. So, it's there. This constant dynamic of change is there, and somehow we're being held back, Taj. We really are.
do you know anything about? There is talk about like an AI or artificial intelligence that's sort of like in control of the planet to a certain extent.
It's not. No, it's not. It's not. Well, it could have evolved into an AI, but over 40 years of experience tells me that it's a form of life. It's not an AI, although aspects of it may have evolved into that. I don't know. But from what we're seeing from my observations and maybe other contactees' observations at the sharp end of all this is it's a form of life rather than an artificially intelligent thing. Although when you get to a level when you start talking about the architecture of the universe, that could well be some very advanced form of AI. That really could be.
So it could be like a conscious AI.
Yeah, that could. Yes, that's it, sir. You've got it. These aliens sometimes talk about universe architects. So that a comment that they've uttered. It's very strange because I'm not getting enough information from them, but I'm getting information, and yet somebody else somewhere else will have another piece of the jigsaw to fit together. So it's like one giant, great big jigsaw. And as I say, what we're up against, Taj, in the UK as experiences are actually, people who pretend to work for the government. I know I've said this previously. People who are fantasists. And elements of the secret police within the intelligence services that seem to target us without accountability, which is also very worrying.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, a lot of it's stuff I think for most people would be quite difficult to get their heads around when you think about races who could be thousands or even millions of years ahead of us in technology to try and get your head around what they're capable of.
This is true. This is true. However, they're only about, from what they were telling, from my experiences, they were only telling me they're about 800, 900 years ahead. Not that really, which in the grand scheme of things, if you're following an architectural blueprint.
Yeah, well, if you look at planet Earth and if you went back 900 years and showed someone an iPhone, they'd think you were a bloody witch or something.
Of course they would. But you see, your listeners are getting their heads around it. You're getting your head around it. There are other people in my local pub who are joiners, accountants, water board engineer, managing director of a company. I'm meant to be the guy sat there who's into UFOs. Yeah, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. He's into that, and yet I can sit in my local and people will wander over and they'll chat and they'll say, "I saw this, I saw that, this happened to me. I daren't tell anyone else. Lovely to see you. Ta-ra. Nobody's taking the mick," and they've got a grasp of what is going on. In other words, the public are probably more switched on than we would think, Taj, on this subject. Yes.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, well, most of the people that I know are pretty switched on anyway.
Yeah, of course they are.
I talk about this kind of stuff pretty much every day with
indeed,
a lot of people.
Sir. Yes, indeed, so. So I think what I've done in the space of an hour, Sarge, is I've covered a great deal of ground of what is highly complex, sophisticated interaction, interplay going on for reasons that I don't quite get round, but I've more or less got there, kind of thing. I think in a very short space of time. I don't know if you've got any further questions for me. I just thought that your listeners some insight.
I was hoping Christine would be on by now. I'm not sure where she is.
Right.
I don't know if you can carry on for a little bit longer until she comes on.
That's fine. Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to ask you. I don't know if you know anything about Majestic 12 and how they fit into the whole picture, the big picture, as it were.
Yeah. Well, I think that the Majestic 12 are a very real organisation. I think that the Collins Elite. What is interesting to note is my focus was on the work of the Collins Elite, because they seem to be right on the money. It's interesting because when the Collins Elite researched all this, as Nick Redfern pointed out in his book, that's not their real name, but there's some interesting snippets of information regarding this in Linda Howe's book called High Strangeness Volume 1, whereby she's talking about being approached by an agency who was looking specifically at what we've just talked about with the Collins Elite, but they said that they were from the Defence Intelligence Agency, and they were showing a kind of data and information that talked about the very thing that Nick Redfern talks about in the book called non-human entities, or NHEs, and they were researching this, they were looking at it, and so we can see that this constant theme of them looking at something that appears out of view, hidden, but is actually very there, is what they were looking at. So it's mirrored in Linda Howe's research as well, and it's certainly mirrored in Nick Redfern's research. I can't remember the guy now I can't remember the guy who it was who had focused in on at the Hughes Aircraft Company and managed to gain a sense of what he was doing and where it was all leading to. He was an aerospace engineer, and I've forgotten his name. He ended up blowing himself up. They claimed that he was performing a great big ritual because he'd studied the work of Crowley, and it is claimed that he'd actually blown himself up doing this ritual at the time. They'd reached some startling conclusions that some of these UFOs had come from another realm, another dimension.
How far back ago was that?
1950, 1940, 1960, round about that area. And unbeknown to MJ12 at the time, I think they were unaware that this agency was there. They were unaware, I feel, MJ12, that this was going on. And of course, MJ12 was studying the UFO phenomena at the time. I believe that MJ12 were a real organisation, and I do believe that they've probably advanced now quite far and deeply into what the UFO phenomena is all about. And I also believe that really the American government should really, as defenders of the free world, perhaps sometimes hang its head in shame as to what it got involved with, because I don't think they understood clearly what they were getting into. I don't think I did, Charge, actually, when it all started with me. I didn't know what I was getting into, and I assumed. I put up this website on the internet, this hideous website, that assumed everything there was to know about UFOs back in 1999. I ain't got a bloody clue what I was talking about back then. And it was literally just unbelievable what I put up. And of course, this brings the kind of these observational agencies out of the woodwork who come and have a sniff around you. At the time, I'm looking at the stats of that website. At the time, I'm getting visits from Navy facilities and the military and all this kind of thing, because they know it goes on. They do know this is happening.
My understanding of MJ12 is that they basically are the middleman, I guess, between the aliens and the military and the governments, and they instigate and control all the technology that's developed, and they control the underground bases and that type of thing. So all the experiments and back engineering, that's all done. It's under their supervision, so to speak.
If you look at a case in Brazil where the Nordics, the one blue-eyed people, had actually abducted a Brazilian farm worker on his farm and explained that to him. They explained all about the situation regarding cattle mutilations. So what the Nordics were hinting at was the fact that it ain't all a vision of utopia. It ain't all kind of plain sailing. It ain't all love, peace and light among them all. Interesting to note, a fascinating insight on the Nordics' technology is the fact that when this man was abducted in Brazil, he left an imprint on his bed sheet of him being of his body, as if it was burnt onto the sheet itself. Right. And what is fascinating is when this went for analysis with textile scientists and fibre analysis, it's interesting to note that they said from analysis, which is a glimpse of the technology that they're using, that the fibre had been scorched. But what was absolutely fascinating was the fibre had been scorched to a very high temperature for a split second, but the other fibre remained completely cool as if not touched. So it's as if you had this precision heating going on where one element of the fibre was hot, but the fibre right next to it was cool and wasn't even scorched.
Right.
And this is the kind of absolutely fascinating kind of technology that they used. And not only that, it was lifted slightly forward as if moving forward. You see. So I'm wondering, Taj, if I'll leave an imprint on my bed sheet when they take me aboard the craft. Because they are an hilarious lot. These Nordics, these one blue-eyed people, are quite a comical bunch, really. But yet, the work that they do is very serious. They don't just come here just for the hell of it. And it won't just be happening to me, as I say, it will be happening to other people as well. It is what it is. It is the evolution of consciousness. It certainly is.
Do you want to talk about when was your last abduction experience and what happened? And
the last abduction experience was during sleep. I'm unwell. I'm not well at the moment. But it happened. I'm unwell at the moment because you're constantly getting monitored neurally in sleep. You see. Because there's kind of like a lot of paranormal warfare goes on, paranormal espionage, I think is the word, goes on with all this. So yesterday, and I don't wish to talk about it, I'm afraid, and the reason for that is because A, it's shocking, and B, it's staggering, and C, I'll only say it and articulate it if I can articulate it so that your listeners go away with a sense of what is going on. Because it's no good me being sensationalist, it's no good me lying to your listeners until I can get a more accurate picture of what I'm seeing and why it's going on. But I will just say this, that they use screen memories. They will use a concept called screen memories, where you could be, Taj, for example, dreaming of playing balls in a bowling alley, or dreaming of watching television when in fact you're aboard their craft, being analysed, whatever they're doing at the time. It does go on. It's very real.
right, okay. I mean, I'm actually looking into. I've got an appointment next week for regression therapy. I don't know if you looked into that at all, to regain memories, present life, past life, that type of thing. Is there anything that you've looked into?
No, because I get that much interference, that much noise, that much signal. Because in some cases, there's that very famous scene in the Matrix where Trinity is with Neo, and she kind of like is in the craft with him, some sort of craft, I think it is, and she just sees a glimpse of the sky and the sun, and then goes back down again, and she just can't get her head around that, and it's kind of like similar to that metaphor of you've seen the sky and the sun. I want to know more about this. Let's have a chat with you, kind of thing. And so a lot of activity happens where you're getting monitored, and not necessarily by the rules of time as we would think either, because it all happens in like a space-time continuum environment. It doesn't happen in the way we would think. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence doesn't happen in the way we would think either. It's beyond. It's kind of like more a merging of consciousness in a time collapsed environment where linear time doesn't exist, is where it all really happens, Taj.
A lot of people talk about the holographic universe, and that none of this is real. I don't know what your opinion on that.
Everything. It appears to me that it's very real, and it appears to me that some supreme being is continually evolving through many facets of reality, and these facets are mirrored in life in other planets, and it seems to me that with some of these, the same rules apply. There seems to be an architectural blueprint, a universal architecture flowing throughout the universe, which could well indeed be higher evolved AI. For example, the trees, the stars, the planets, all following a particular kind of blueprint. And I think it's when it gets to the kind of the plasma civilizations, the plasma beings, and the higher celestial beings, and this cosmic hierarchy. Certainly, it certainly exists, and has existed on Earth for a very long time as well. I think we'll find that back in the day, back in the early days, in the very early days of human civilization, when we were evolving, we were kind of like one kinship. We were evolved spiritually, and I think that we kind of like lost our way. I think we fell, Sarge. Basically, we became the fallen, as we see today. It's quite amazing, really.
Well, that's
Quite
sort of
amazing the illusionary path we're going on.
that sort of like leads on to the question then, why are we here?
Well, this is where I think the AI question comes in, because I think we're part of a cosmic entity or being that is that we have a signature and alignment to, and I think that we are kind of like part of that and making our own evolutionary progress in life. And I think sometimes we can be derailed. It seems to me that there is a quest in human incarnation to move towards the higher celestial on our spiritual journey. This seems to be a theme that keeps cropping up, where we are striving to reach spiritual transcendency rather than falling, if you get my drift. It seems to be what's going on, Taj. And there seems to be an AI component, a very advanced AI component. There seems to be some control, some architectural, like software architecture behind the scenes running, that seems to propel this universe and the people within it, multiverses, dimensions, along. I mean, the issue of multiverses is absolutely staggering. You've got that research from the guy in California, where he's actually he's done the scientific research that he says, similar to bubbles colliding. He can tell from his research, from his astrophysical research, that there are parallel universes. His instruments measure that to be correct. I've forgotten the guy's name, but he did a report on it. Similar to the principle of bubbles kind of just hitting each other and breaking apart again without bursting, kind of thing. His measurement analysis, his electronic analysis, the hydrogen line analysis, all indicates evidence of paranormal, kind of like a parallel universe, which means there could be more than one charge, more than one me out there, and that can be very frightening for a contact experiencer. That can be very frightening indeed.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, the world as it is not designed for people to ascend or to wake up, is it? I mean, well, you can go for everything from GMO foods to chemtrails to
that's an
being
issue.
bombarded by Wi-Fi and
you could, yes, but I think that's an issue of signal from noise, isn't it? All that's noise, isn't it? We carry the signal within us. We've been conned by a sleight of hand. So we are in possession of the higher celestial signal within all human beings. That's what makes us so unique. And I think that what we see, all this dumbing down, all this paradigm that we've got, is a sleight of hand, is noise from the signal. All the paranormal warfare programs that the Americans did were based on the principle of signal from noise, of separating your intuition from your noise. Is it a bird or is it a plane? What does your intuition tell you? It's a plane, but you think bird. Therefore, that's noise. The signal was the plane. And it was all about honing in on the signal from the noise, especially in terms of remote viewing. Because Taj, a lot of people think that they've studied remote viewing, think that they can do remote viewing. And a lot of people glibly throw this term around, remote viewing, when in fact it's actually a precise art and a precise procedure involving signal from noise and the use of ideograms and the use of kind of like collective symbolism as well, which is very clever.
Well, yeah, I have looked into remote viewing. There's a channel on YouTube, I think, where they do it regularly.
Right.
For the Farsight Institute, I think it's called.
That's right, Farsight do it. Yeah, that's right. I studied the Ed Dames one. I studied the actual CRV one. And what is interesting, Sarge, here's an interesting thing, which demonstrates probably how the kind of space-time continuum contactee environment works. In that, you would draw an ideogram, which is like a squiggly line. But in the courses that I teach to understand these concepts, in the courses I teach to understand this concept, the ideograms, these little symbols, are a collective language. So, for example, without even knowing the target, when the coordinates are given, without even knowing the target, that person could draw a squiggly line. But each squiggly line followed a pattern. There was about 12 in total of ideograms. One, for example, would indicate noise. One would indicate water. One would indicate a mountain. Another would indicate energy, life form. And it's interesting that 9 times out of 10, even in the early stages of training in remote viewing, when they drew this squiggly line, which is a specific shape, 9 times out of 10 they'd always get the life form. So if there was life presence at the target site, they'd get it every time. And they would get it every time because we're part of a collective hidden kind of environment. And what would happen is of course, when the coordinates were given and the remote viewer started drawing the target from the ideogram, this squiggly line, you'd draw a squiggly line, and then you'd have about 5 seconds to quickly, about 20, 30, 40 seconds actually, to quickly take in the target, the data, the dimensions, the colour, the smell, the texture, all this kind of thing, in a little sequence in front of you, in a little template in front of you. So the question has to be, in terms of time and space, the mind has obviously reached out to somewhere and come back again to retrieve that data. So in terms of UFO contacts and what goes on behind the scenes, it's between that point A and point B that a lot is going on. A lot of complexity is going on as well, because time, as we know it, isn't linear, it's collapsed, it's all one. So you could be seen and heard, time isn't kind of existing. And that's a very freaky thing to deal with in terms of the contactee, and in some cases, some contactees report visions of the future, which they'll get, and impressions from the future. Not that they're getting information about who won the horse race at Kempton or anything like that, but they're getting actual visions of kind of like the future and events, time slippage, this kind of thing, because it happens in a space-time continuum.
Right, yeah, I have heard the term that time is not linear, but it's all time occurs all at the same time, all
Yes.
together. We just experience it
Yes.
because we're in this 3D reality. We experience it in a linear fashion.
Yes, this is absolutely correct. And so what you've got is kind of like that environment. If you could imagine that being a line of signal, then you can imagine somebody like myself, for example, having contact with something on the other. If I'm point B and I draw a line to point A, and beyond point A is another dimension with people in it, and that signal is tracked backwards and forwards, and I'm going to get a lot of noise, I'm going to get a lot of interference. Similar probably to the paradigm the human race faces, we're going to get a lot of interference. We're going to get a lot of players coming in and coming out to try and find out what that line was all about, what that signal was all about, what that burst of signal was about in the ether, kind of thing. And this is what happens to contact experiences. That's precisely, if you could zone it in time, that's precisely what's actually going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this goes into the whole sort of paradox, time travel, things like the Nazi bell. I don't know if you know anything about the Nazi bell.
Yes, it does. Yes,
and
it
all
does.
That thing, and the stuff that happened at Montauk, and
yes,
all kinds of things.
It does, and it's even more simplistic than that, because time travel is essentially the flow of consciousness through time. It really is based on those principles. You develop time travel very simply indeed. And therefore I demonstrate in one of my talks about the space-time continuum and how it works, and the fact of how disclosure works as well, because if you have, Taj, that line that I've talked of travelling from point A to point B, and we'll assume that point A are the extraterrestrials of an advanced nature and point B is me, somewhere along the way, we interject, let's say, I don't know, I've got my letters wrong, but let's say point C comes into the timeline, a person C walks into the timeline, discovers a conversation is going on with A and B, and starts joining in that conversation. And they're not governed by the laws of time either. You've got quite an exciting little conversation going on there, haven't you? Do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah,
that's how. And the interesting thing about that is what the ETs call the Yasmat paradox, whereby your work, my work, somebody else's work actually affects this process, whereby if it wasn't for us talking about this, the very scenario we're talking about wouldn't have happened in the first place. And that's mind-boggling, but it seems to be the way of what is going on. And the ET that I dealt with called that Yasmat. Yasmat is Sanskrit. It also relates to the German bloodline as well, it would appear. But Yasmat meaning the causal nature of. So
yeah, it's to do with like cause and effect. Whereas
cause and effect.
The effect could cause the cause. It could be the other way around.
Yeah, this is
most people can't get their head around that.
Yeah, that's right, Serge. What I'm talking about wasn't discovered by me. What I'm talking about is based on what they've been telling me. and what I've witnessed and what I've seen. So it doesn't actually come from me. It's actually coming from my experiences, what I've learned, and what they've told me. And they're very matter of fact. They'll only say a few sentences to me. They won't waffle. They'll just say a few essential sentences, which is strangely interesting. You know, about 2 years ago, something happened with these guys and the blonde blue-eyed people. Something happened where lives were saved. It even made very small headlines in newspapers, but nobody batted an eyelid. And what was incredible was they told me precisely what they were going to do, and they did it, and it was in the papers. And I just found that absolutely incredible. They'd saved lives, and it was just a very small headline in the paper as if nothing had happened, because it was prevented. Had it happened, it would have been disastrous, but it was prevented because their technology is quite advanced. So what is fascinating is you've got this advanced culture, the blonde, blue-eyed people, as I talk about, who are taking a very keen interest in the affairs of this country, and that's incredible, absolutely incredible. And I hope that there are higher evolved brains than me who can also help me to work it out, or even yourself, Taj, you're trying to get to the bottom of it, aren't you? There you go, you know, that's the situation. Coming up to 8:30, Taj, I'm a carer, and I've got some care duties to do, so I don't know how long you'd want me on the show, but I do have these duties to perform.
Can you do like another 20 minutes or so?
Yeah, I can hold on for another 20 minutes if there's anything you want to talk about, or if they have any, you know, if your listeners have any questions. I don't know whether they can ask any questions in the forums or whatever.
Let me just check the chat room and see if there's any questions in there. I mean, I did talk to a friend of mine about this, about time machines and things like that, changing timelines.
Yes.
And you don't actually need it. I mean, you don't need a time machine to change timelines. The way she explained it to me is very simple to change timelines. Something as simple as not being able to find your car keys for a couple of minutes. So, you know, you might arrive at a destination a little bit later. You might miss somebody. It's a bit like the sliding doors movie effect, you know.
It is,
where
yeah.
Something very simple.
Yeah.
You spend a couple of minutes looking for car keys. You get to a destination 5 minutes later. You miss the person that you were supposed to meet. Changes your whole timeline. Changes your future. You know, that type of thing.
This is exactly what happens, and therefore there is in people like us, myself, who are dealing with all this, the importance of praying to the higher celestial for guidance, the importance of praying to that which is highly evolved and more intelligent than yourself, because you've no idea what you've got yourself involved in. You've no idea, for example, if, let us say, it is possible that you could save your town from flooding via influence, via psychic influencing. There's a possibility that event in time does not manifest. However, Taj, it's floating now in time. It's floating. It's out there. It's a signal. It's a mass of quantum signaling that's going to manifest somewhere else, not necessarily on this planet. It could manifest somewhere else. This is the extraordinary thing of influence. There's a site called the Wingmakers site, which is absolutely fascinating. Wingmakers.com.
Yeah, I've seen that site, the Wingmakers.
On the interviews with Dr. Jemison Neruda. You've listened to all of them. Something to do with blank slate technology or BST to do with influencing. There's some grains of truth in that interview regarding this situation of influencing with the technology called BST, which they talk about on the Wingmakers site, whereby you influence one event, but something happens elsewhere. And this is kind of like power. And it's power that you're not sure what you're dealing with, that can cause strange effects here, there, and everywhere. It becomes very much like the movie, the Eric Sykes and the Plank, you know, where he's walking down the street with this plank kind of thing, and he's knocking people off bikes and that kind of thing. So I think when it comes to power, you've got to be careful of what you're doing, which is why we always strive to pray to the higher celestial, pray to Krishna consciousness. So therefore, you know, you will hit these other forces, Taj. You will come across them. They will be there. There is a spiritual hierarchy. There is a fallen hierarchy as well, you see. You're quite right in what you say. As to where it's going, I don't know. It's a very scary world. The guy we've got in the White House at the moment is pretty scary. He's a pretty scary chap, because you don't know what is worrying is you just don't know what they're exposed to You don't know when they sleep, what's going on behind the scenes. The Russians, for example, on their new cosmology site, on the Russian version of it, was talking about how they protected Boris Yeltsin psychically. There was a lot going on with the Russians and psychic warfare. And as I repeated by a strange twist of irony, the CIA funded it, which I found unbelievable but true. CIA contributed to to the Russian psychic warfare program. How the hell that happened was absolutely, it's just unbelievable, isn't it? But this is what goes on behind the scenes. And I think that with the new war on terror that's going on at the moment, I think psychic warfare is used there as well. I've been told by a mysterious source that is actually what's happening there. So it's a crazy world of the misuse of power, and we've forgotten, Taj, who we are. The human race has certainly forgotten who it is. It's forgotten. Yeah.
I agree with that. We've got a question here. Why is what's happening to you not happening to, say, like me or someone else? Is it to do with
No,
types?
no. As I said earlier, it could be happening to you, Taj, but you wouldn't know. It could even be happening to the person in the forum, but they wouldn't know either.
Right.
It depends. Some of us know, and some of us don't. The guy, for example, who's the joiner, can walk up to me in the pub and say, "I had this experience with a UFO," blah 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 blah. But he has the ability to walk away and carry on with his work. Whereas somebody like myself does not have the ability to walk away because we're in it 24/7. It's happening all the time. Some of it is bloodline related and probably relates to who we were before we incarnated as to who we are now. Some of us probably led very unique lives before we were reincarnated, related to certain bloodline. But nobody's going to tell you, Taj. Nobody in this game tells you the deck of cards that you're holding and what it means. Nobody does. You can be running around in circles forevermore, but the point being is that no individual is special. It could happen to any individual. It certainly could. In this game, it could. They're very choosy as to who they liaise with. Why they're choosy, I don't know, but they go for certain types of individuals for mysterious reasons.
Could it be hybrids? Do you know if you're a hybrid or?
No, it would be more bloodline related to probably a very ancient royal bloodline, I would think. Myself, other people may have this bloodline that relates all the way back to probably at the time of, from the research I've read, probably to the time of like the Box saga, something called the Box saga that I studied with Aya Bock and the Box saga, where it was related that the kind of like in the beginning, the human race was kind of like it was kept in kinship by what was known as the Royal Court of Assa. And they were in kinship to the human race. They were higher involved, and they taught the human race to write. They taught the human race to populate after disaster. Long story, but it seems to be that way. So I'm thinking on the lines of unique bloodline as well, which is probably why I've got the high level of activity that I have. They have said that it does relate to that as well. So there is a bloodline issue from what I'm told. I'm saying from what I've been told because I don't know, Taj. I'm not sure. I'm a man trying to find my way in all this. So I will
it's the same as me, really.
Yeah, that's right, mate. And it's not right to make sensationalist claims either. I think you've got to be as straight as you can be with people and not sensationalise. You're just relaying what you've observed and what they're telling you. And that's the way to gain respect, I think.
So is that also related to like why a lot of people are awake, but the majority are sort of like, they're not awake really?
Yeah, I think it is. You see there again, playing devil's advocate, the guy, like for example, my mate, who's a joiner, a busy family, not really into this, but get him in the pub and he'll chat to you all night about it, and then he carries on with his daily life as if nothing has happened. Same with a guy who's a plumber who I know. Same thing, absolutely loves to talk about it. Another guy as well. Are they awake? Are they actually awake more than we would know? That's the thing. Are they slowly waking up? Is their understanding unique? Are they evolved in some way that they can switch off from all this and carry on with their daily life? Especially true in Star Wars and Master Yoda, the power to lift an X-fighter out of a lake, but yet he chooses to stir his cooking pot. He chooses to cook a stew with all that power at his disposal. It's a very interesting duality, isn't it, of wakefulness and mindfulness in a sea of darkness. This world is a dark world, Taj, and that's what we're battling against, darkness. You're still there. They're not got you.
Yeah, sorry, it's a big explosion go off outside my house. I don't know what that is. It sounds like a bomb just went off. It's probably a car backfire.
All right.
Yeah. Next question is: we all talk about a higher consciousness, yet the elite few lie and are covert regarding humanity. How can that be higher consciousness operating for the greater good? That's low vibrational energy.
Sorry, just explain that question again.
So we all talk about higher consciousness, yet the elite use lies and are covert regarding humanity. So how can that be higher consciousness operating for the greater good? Well, it's not really, is it?
Well, it isn't, is it? As you rightly said, Taj, it isn't operating for the greater good, but it's operating for a good bit of real estate and a good bit of investment. It's operating as a business. It's operating as a currency. It's operating as the fallen. It operates because it can. And yet, strangely enough, there's this mindset, this kind of metaphor that goes on similar to Agent Smith, where he sits with Neo and says, I want out, Neo. I can't stand it anymore. I can't stand this stimulation I'm sat in. I can't stand what I'm doing anymore. I want out. I think that metaphoric scenario, what the Wachowski brothers did in the Matrix movie, is quite telling. It's quite profound, quite interesting as to what we see today with what goes on. A lady friend of mine recently came across this kind of scenario where she was attempted to be recruited, it appeared, by one of these agencies and went into a right circus. She could only describe it as a circus. I was horrified as to what went on. And it was a circus of lies, sleight of hand, deception, noise. They'd seen this stuff on the internet, etc., etc. And they led her this very bizarre merry dance, the goal of which I know not, but it was all about control. They even said it was about control. The question is, why do you need to be controlled when you are as powerful as a god? She said, this lady in question said to me that, well, yes, this person said that, she'd forgotten who she was. She'd forgotten. We have forgotten as a collective. We have forgotten as a collective who we are, Taj, and what we belong to, and our rights as gods. We are as gods. We don't need to worship false idols. We have the heritage within us to the higher celestial, is what I think is ultimately going on. But we are in a prison. At the moment, it is planet fear. And there is, as I say, this very disturbing mission creep at the moment towards conflict, which I just cannot get my head around. Can't get my head around it as to why that's happening.
Do you think like this, the higher consciousness that we talk about, is that basically, to put without any other word I can think of, God, basically?
Yeah, an incident.
That's not the word I wanted to use, but it's the only word I could find to describe it.
No. When that incident happened to me last year, where something came, something came at me psychically in sleep, told me certain things, said back it off. We know of your experiences, this, that, and the other. His this. And you bow in respect of that. You honour it. You just say, okay, thank you very much, and stop what you're doing immediately. You do, because the good guys don't always win. But equally, Taj, and this is a demonstration of the dynamics of what mankind doesn't see. We'll call that the fallen. But equally out there was an incident that happened in Southport where I was once again getting hammered in sleep again. Next minute I know, I thought, sod this, and I went outside around about 5:15 to discover this UFO that suddenly went kind of flash out of the sky as if it had ripped a hole in space-time, started flying around the house in Southport where I was. Up and down it was going. And I actually looked at it and thought, here we chuff and go again. This is ridiculous. This is a bloody dot of light that's not an aircraft that flies backwards and forwards. It's them again. I don't understand. And I went back into the house and I was tired out and I fell asleep again to be presented with this incredible vision from them of what they were talking about. And what they were talking about was it was nice. It was very pleasurable. It was like a heritage, our birthright, our understanding. it was higher than any drug you could take. It was giving you this insight, this glimpse as to what was beyond where it came from, which was a higher evolved form of life, a higher intelligence that was looking at human affairs. So what you've got played out behind the scenes as if this was some sort of drama is that versus the fallen. So you've got this biblical interplay going on of these forces around mankind at the moment that are interlocked with each other in a form of conflict. And mankind is, of course, a piggy in the middle, but it appears that our birthright is to the higher order. Our birthright is to the higher celestial. And I'll never forget that vision, which replaced all the kind of negativity that happened to me. It was a staggering vision. I can't even put it into words, Taj, but it was kind of like deeply symbolic, deeply Egyptian, and showed me where it had come from beyond time and space. It was as if it had ripped a tear in space itself and said, "This is our world beyond." And it was just incredible. I can't describe, almost orgasmic in feeling and nature as to what it was, you know. And you know, I've had 40 years of hell with it, so that made a refreshing change. But what I'm saying is the dynamic that's being played out is what I'm trying to say to your listeners, matey.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I understand. Next question is: do you know anything about what's happening in Antarctica?
Antarctica. That's an interesting scenario being played out there. I recommend that the listeners have a look at the documents online. Just type in Operation Tabalan, and if you type in the words Operation Tabalan, you will see that the United Kingdom.
How do you spell that?
Tabalan is spelled Taberlan.
Right.
And if you look at that, you will discover the UK was deeply, and I mean deeply, involved in operations in Antarctica to investigate an alien presence there. The story goes that members of the Special Boat Service, oddly enough, there's an interesting story about somebody on the Special Boat Service having to arrest an alien on the London Underground. So he said, I don't know whether that's correct, but this witness who was in Special Boat Service did not change his testimony after a 5-year gap. The guy who interviewed him was quite an educated chap. It's all about, in Antarctica, a Marine battalion, a Marine platoon was got it. It was said that they were mysteriously done in by something very mysterious, and this guy claimed under Operation Tabalan that he was sent in, Special Boat Service was sent in to investigate what had gone on, and they had a confrontation with aliens. They had a confrontation with what you would call polar men in that region. His platoon had a confrontation with them, shots fired, all this kind of thing. Britain seemed to know what was going on in Antarctica before the Americans did with Operation High Jump. It is rumoured that there are some UFOs that come from that region. It is rumoured that it is a nation state unacknowledged. After World War II, the Nazi scientific base literally shifted itself up there, and it is rumoured that is a mechanism that kind of has instigated itself into the UFO cover-up that we see today. Some researchers suggest that there is a degree of the Third Reich operating behind the scenes on that to keep it all covered up and locked down. When you think about Operation Paperclip and the Nazi scientists that went into Paperclip and then went into NASA, that paradigm, that mindset of kind of like blocking us all off from our understanding is certainly there, Taj. So I'd recommend your listeners all have a look at Operation Tabalan, not Operation High Jump, the British version of events in Antarctica with UFOs and extraterrestrials.
Yeah, I did hear that there were a lot of missing U-boats at the end of World War II.
Yeah, that's right.
No one could really explain where they all went.
Yeah. I think it was Martin Bormann and his merry band and Nazi Gold all went to Antarctica. According to this witness who was in the Special Boat Service, he saw the U-boats parked in bases there. He saw them there. And of course, that paradigm, that scientific base may have evolved into something. It might still be going strong. You just don't know. There is an argument that the Russians have that actually Antarctica and the North Pole or South Pole, North Pole isn't it top? There's a wormhole going on there where the UFOs are coming in and out quite routinely. I do recommend the work of Bruce Caffey and the harmonic grid, whereby he believes that the UFOs are using an harmonic grid system. They fly on a grid, which is interesting because the UFOs that come on my garden use the same flight pattern every single time. They come in a certain direction, they go out in a certain direction, they come in from right to left or left to right in the same track, on the same track. It's not a deviation in position either. They seem to stick to like a railway line of approach, coming in and out, which I find very interesting to observe, Taj.
Mm. I don't know if you heard the story you probably have about, I think it was Admiral Byrd who flew a plane down there.
He did,
And he
yeah.
had 3 hours of unaccounted time.
Yes, that's
where,
right. Yeah.
You know, he said he flew into this
Yes.
almost like green sort of area.
Yes.
Which it was all warm, you know.
There is the same thing continues in Indonesia as well, where there are rumours going round of people going missing in Indonesia, where they catch a glimpse of this mysterious other world similar to Antarctica. In fact, there was a radio crew in Indonesia, and the locals told one member of the radio crew not to wear yellow socks, but he disobeyed that, and he got himself into a load of difficulty with something that he didn't understand because they seemed to zone in on bright colours, and he was warned not to do that. This seems to, and from what one of the survivors in Indonesia was saying, who caught a glimpse of this world, it was similar to the world of Antarctica. Green, different kind of animals there, very strange carry on. Didn't quite understand what was happening. So it's a
I was told that
yeah.
if you go to Antarctica, you're not allowed to smoke or drink outside or something like that. Because the alien species, they don't like that, basically.
Yes.
And it may, instigate some kind of, conflict or something.
This was hair raising. This testimony from this guy who went to Antarctica in as early as 47, I think, before the Americans did. I think 46. The British were there before the Americans were in Antarctica, and his testimony is absolutely incredible about what went on there. But it's not up in lights, but I'd recommend your listeners to have a look at it, Taj. I must depart from you, Taj, getting on the care duties to perform. But I hope that your listeners have gained an insight, and I hope that you've got to know me a bit better, Taj. Because you didn't really know who I was, I think. So I hope you've got to know me a bit better via your show.
Yes, I have. Yeah. Thanks for coming on the show at such short notice.
Not at all. I just hope that your listeners have enjoyed it, and I trust that there'll be a link on YouTube for this show. Will it?
It'll be up in a couple of days. I'll send you the link.
Thank you very much indeed.
Okay. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. I'm not sure what's happened to Christine Hart today. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what's been going on with myself. I will be having an interview in the next couple of weeks for my own radio show on Revolution Radio with Sarah Adams. Hopefully that will be a success and we'll start our show in the new year. Sarah herself has got a lot of plans for the new year, and we may do a show shortly to discuss her plans. Myself, I'm doing a lot of things with interviews coming up in the next few weeks with a few people, but I've sort of put those on hold until the new year due to Christmas and everything. But I'm also doing some things like regression therapy. Basically, I've sort of started questioning a lot of things as to why I've come into certain aspects of the alternative community, such as the Basis Project, and why I'm meeting certain people, and why I seem to be pushed into a certain direction with interviews. I mean, I've had a lot of problems with interviews that haven't happened for whatever reason. I've put that down to, bad timing, or, maybe I wasn't supposed to interview that person at that time, or it wasn't the right time. Or you could say there was interference. A couple of people have pulled out of interviews, and I'm not too sure why. But I started questioning a lot of things as to why I'm doing what I'm doing in a lot of ways. Initially, I came into this community in the Basis Project because I was interested in what was going on with people like James Casbolt and Max Spears, and obviously a lot has happened with Max Spears this year. And I've sort of had an idea of what I wanted to do before the whole Max Beers thing, I think my direction has changed a little bit. I mean, I wanted to investigate targeted individuals and try and find solutions. But I'm learning as I go along as well. So it's very difficult for me to know what to do a lot of the time when I'm interviewing people as to what direction I want to take it. And I think the only thing I can do at the moment is to let the universe take me where it wants to go, I guess. At the moment, it seems to be taking me towards doing my own radio show. So the interviews that I would have been doing on my own channel, I guess I will be doing on Revolution Radio, hopefully next month. I'm hoping that that show will be a good show. We'll be covering a lot of topics, especially when Sarah's on the show. Obviously, she knows a lot of things as far as multi-dimensional sort of aspects of her work. But I'll also be covering interviews with people both in the UK, US, all over the place really, regarding the alternative field really, the conspiracy field, I guess you could call it. But we will be covering a lot of stuff with Sarah regarding her work next year, what she's planning on doing. I'm planning on in the new year, hopefully starting a detox. I've sort of found that I can only go so far as far as I want to. I'm not really a kind of person who does all this sort of astral work, and I wouldn't even classify myself as anything like a super soldier or a psychic or any of that type of thing really. I guess I sort of connect with people, bring people together in a way in this community. I mean, I've met a lot of people through the Basis project who I'm good friends with still. It was a bit unfortunate what happened with me leaving the Basis project, but I won't really go into too much detail about that. That's in the past, and I don't really want to linger on the past. And I want to hopefully look forward to next year being a good year for me. And again, you know, looking at interviews and things with Sarah especially, we'll be doing a lot of stuff on health, diet, fitness, and a lot of the stuff that she works on. We'll be covering all of her video blogs, and I know she'll be doing a lot of video blogs on her charity stuff, homeless, and she'll also be doing more of her own interviews, like the ones she did with Jim Mars. And I know she's going to a big conference in February, a big UFO conference where she'll probably be meeting a lot of people, such as David Wilcock and others at that conference, and maybe doing talks with them as well. But in our show, we'll be covering health, diets, and supplements. I may be doing a detox myself and reporting back on the best methods of doing a detox, as well as testing supplements. So we may ask people to give us any ideas of what supplements they've tried, and then I can try them for a month or so, or Sarah may recommend a supplement that works for her, and then I will try that for a month and report back as to the benefits, or if any. And again, you know, I'll do regular reports on Sarah and her multidimensional work, her business, what's going on there. We'll also be doing a lot of stuff on the conferences and events that she'll be attending, and also anything that is coming up in the news as well, and the conspiracy field. We'll be discussing on the show as well. Obviously, Sarah's a lot into the esoteric side of things, and we'll be talking about that, the occult. Obviously, we're talking about astral work, out-of-body experiences, etc., mythology, Egypt, Atlantis. Again, this goes into a lot of why I'm doing my regression therapy. Because I have had people come up to me and say, oh, they've seen me in astral, or they remember me from past lives or Egypt or wherever. And obviously I've got no memory of that. So I'm going to be having a Skype next week with a lady named Katerina, who's appeared on the Basis Project, as a matter of fact. And she's going to be doing some regression therapy with me, and I'll probably be reporting back on that on the radio show as well, to discuss what I find out about myself as far as, my past life and my past life therapy, what I find out about my past lives. I sort of had an idea of what I've experienced in past lives, because I have certain experiences through dreams and such. I don't really have any astral experiences, but I have a lot of memories from dreams, especially things like Egypt and Atlantis, and dreams about certain people who I remember. But again, dreams, you can't be substantiated, so doing something like regression therapy would be better for me, I guess, knowing that I can at least prove that some of the stuff that's happening in my dreams may actually have happened to me in past lives. But other than that, on the radio show, what else will we be covering? We'll be covering things like, obviously, stuff like history. A lot of people talk about Mandela effects, and history is going to change. The future of humanity, transhumanism. I've looked a lot into transhumanism, Agenda 2045, and that type of thing as well. Also things like nanotechnology, chemtrails. We'll be covering quite a lot, really. But again, stuff like the environment, what we've done to the planet, big pharma, and that type of thing as well. But the basis of the show will be a mixture of sort of serious and fun shows. We don't want to make it all sort of doom and gloom on every show. I know a lot of radio shows are pretty repetitive in a lot of things. But we want to keep it sort of lighthearted and not too serious all of the time anyway. But that's coming to the end of the show now, so I'll sign off now and say goodbye, and thank you again to Tony Topping for coming on the show, and have everyone have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.